Claude came and proposed to me that if y'all continue to bring this weather with you, that we may open practice the whole entire practice, and y'all can just keep the weather exactly like it is. We may let y'all stay, but that's going to be a Claude's department, not mine. I'm very pleased with the all-season program. First and foremost, Coach Sinclair and his staff have given us really good juice and energy. I'm really pleased with where the players are and the team is right now as far as in shape, toughness, and doing the off-season conditioning. We're a little over halfway academically with the semester. I do want y'all to realize that these guys are students first, and they're presented with a lot of challenges, especially during spring practice, academically with appointments and tutors and different class stuff. But they're over halfway, and we're really pleased with where they are when it comes to there. We're coming off spring break with tremendous enthusiasm. We're headed into spring ball. We're fired up. 15 practices ahead of us. We're looking forward to that. And we continue a climb that was started in the off-season conditioning today. And I'm one of those people that kind of believe when you're climbing something, you don't really notice people until they're at or near the top. And we're not there. We're not at or near the top yet. But even when you're climbing something, every step is just as important as those last 2 or 3. So today is just the beginning of one of those steps. I'm telling our kids that, you know, we got 15 practices. This is not the first step. The first step is off-season conditioning program. This is just one of the many steps. You don't get noticed, you don't get recognized until you're at or near the top. We're not there. So obviously we want to start that climb, those steps today in the right direction towards building what we hope to build. Now, I'll say this. Each kid has responded really well. They've been very compliant with what we want them to do. They've really worked their tail off. And we're hoping to find out more about each and every player throughout these 15 practices we've got ahead of us. We can only get 1 practice in today. We can't get all 15 in. So we're hoping to temper some enthusiasm out there. We don't have full pads on. We've got helmets and shorts on, which makes it a challenge sometimes to practice that way because we all know that football is not played that way. But I will open it up for questions. Excited about y'all being here.
Coach, obviously a lot of attention will be placed on the quarterbacks. Just curious how you handle that. And I know you come from Alabama where the starter was actually ironed out the first couple of weeks of the season.
Sure.
Is that something that I know you want to put a timetable on this? Or
Yeah, there's no timetable for the quarterback. Great question as far as how we're going to manage it. Obviously today Grayson will go with the 1, Bryce is going to go with the 2, Jacob will go with the 3s. And from there, we're going to decide each day how we do the reps. We have a lot of reps in practice, the way we structure the practice. So each guy will get to throw with all the receivers the way the practice is structured. But we have to obviously have a guy going with each group. And we're going to evaluate those guys each day. We're going to encourage them to worry about each day getting better, not worry about the results of each day. But Coach Chaney and I have had in-depth conversations about how we'll practice. I think the biggest thing you can do at that position is structure the practice so that you get to see each guy the right amount of time. And y'all are concerned a lot more about who's going with what group, where that's not as important to us. It's what each guy's doing within his group that's a lot more important. And we'll structure the practice so that we get to see them progress as they go along.
Can you touch on the philosophies of your 2 coordinators now and kind of drill down on that? You know, you spoke in broad terms before.
I'm probably going to speak in broad terms again, to be honest. But broad terms being we want to be physical, we want to be explosive on offense. We got to go to run the ball. Now, how do we do that? Today's not the day to go out there and prove we can run the ball. We just don't have enough equipment on to do that. But that identity has got to be created through being able to run the ball. Okay, we've got to figure out what these players can do before we figure out who we are. To an extent, you say, well, you should know. Yeah, you've been through all-season conditioning. We did workouts, but to say that I know what our groupings are going to be, is it going to be a 3-wide grouping, 2 tight end, two tight end, 2 back? I got no idea until we find out more about our personnel. But the identity, we got to be able to run the ball. We got to have explosive passes. We got to be able to throw the ball down the field. And you're going to say, well, that's broad. I'm going to say, well, I don't know until we find out more about our personnel. We're not going to make our personnel fit Jim Chaney's offense.
Yeah.
Okay? We can't do that. But defensively, it's very simple. We got to not make many mental errors. We got to go fast because teams are going to go super fast on us. We got to be really sharp. We got to be really smart to not make mistakes and not give up big plays. Because in this day and age, the teams that give up explosive plays and don't get turnovers are the ones that get in trouble. So we're going to really emphasize that this spring and create an identity through that.
Is that a 3-4 base in general?
Oh, sure. We'll go 3-4 base, but we'll also have 4-3. I mean, everybody said Alabama was 3-4. We were 4-3 over 67% of the time. The similarities will be with 3-4 and 4-3. You say what percentage? Depends on what the offense is doing. So I can't answer that question. But we will base, we will meet, we will have position meetings out of a 3-4 shell. Well, there'll be outside backers, there'll be inside backers. But every outside backer has to have a role. Is he a defensive end or is he an inside backer and sub? So we build the defense that way where they get reps in practice at both. So they're kind of hybrid players. But that's no change really for what they did last year, to be honest.
Kirby, when you come to a new place, how do you balance your objectives and your message with your expectation level?
I think that's a challenge. I think that the toughest thing to do in doing that, my objective is to get the most out of this team, this 2016 football team that I can, okay? My expectation is for them to do the best job they can each day of being the best football player. I've told every guy yesterday, I said, don't come out here thinking that you're trying to win the SEC East or win the SEC tomorrow. That's not the goal. The goal is to get better each and every day, okay? So our objective as coaches is to make sure that we're getting the most out of each team we coach. So the best way for us to do that is to have the best practice we can have today, be where your feet are. And we're centered around that today. A lot of enthusiasm. I'm excited about getting these players out there because they've been dying to get out there. So that's our ultimate goal for these guys as we move forward.
Sorry, a quick follow-up. And you were around Coach Saban who had to manage that all the time. Obviously, expectations were meteoric there. Did you learn from him in terms of how to sort of manage that situation in terms of expectations?
I think treating every day as it has a history and life of its own, meaning that what happened yesterday, whether we won or lost, so what, now what? We're moving forward. So whatever is behind us, and we're trying to move forward. So the expectation is to worry about what you're doing right now. Certainly, a lot higher expectations, what they've been through the last couple of years at Alabama. But my expectations for our guys is to be the best we can be every day and not define a goal of saying you got to win this many games, you got to win the East. That's more hypothetical. I want them to worry about the here and now and the whole process of getting to that. And that's probably the most important thing to me, for them to understand that we can't win the spring game today. We can't get practice 15 in today. We can only achieve one thing, which is practice one, and do it the right direction today.
Kirby, with the secondary returning a lot of guys, what are you really looking at of them as you enter the spring season?
Well, I'm looking for great competition because there's some young talent in the secondary that may be as talented or more talented than a guy ahead of them when it comes to jumping, running fast, but maybe they don't have as much experience. So there's great competition there. We told them yesterday, nobody's job's safe on defense or offense. This is totally going to be a competitive environment where every position is up for competition, and if you don't compete every day, then you'll be moved. And we want to create that competition. I think competition breeds a little more success. So we're going to challenge those guys in the secondary to compete out there. And the guys that have been around and played a lot of snaps, they have no guarantee of keeping those snaps because there's some talented guys behind them, and we're going to let them play. Keep it simple for them and let them go.
Kirby, how much continuity do you expect on defense given Jeremy's background with you guys at Bama and with Del Tucker's diversified background in the NFL? What would he tweak or change?
You know, I hate to put a percentage on anything. There's a lot of verbiage that has stayed the same, that I'm very comfortable with, that Mel's comfortable with, that overlap with Jeremy. Now, there's also certain things that we had changed since Jeremy left Alabama that we have now brought here. So to say 50-50 might be accurate right now. We've only gotten through really day 1, day 2, day 3 installs. So there's a lot of continuity there, but I'd say it's probably 50% is the same. Where the kids are going to hear that and say, oh, I know exactly what that is. Oh, wait a second, what does that word mean? But it's not completely starting over by any means.
Kirby, as a defensive coach, each week y'all prepare for the game by looking at film and really seeing what tendencies are. Have you kind of had to do this with this coach with this team, as far as really trying to see what some of their good habits are, bad habits? How have you kind of caught up with knowing what you have?
Well, first off, we gave them all a clean slate. And we said, look, guys, regardless of, we've watched you on tape, we see your resume on the tape, but we're starting off these off-season conditioning programs with a clean slate. If you're a guy that we thought was poor effort on tape, you're going to get every opportunity to prove to us that's not true. So we're going to take you at what you do. What you do on the field is going to tell us a lot more about you than what you've done in your past. And so some of the guys have bought into that, and some of the perceptions of maybe players that we thought were one way, they haven't been that way. And we're going to keep demanding excellence of them, make them compete. You know, when things get tough and it gets 83 degrees out there today and they're tired, we'll find out a lot about a lot of guys, especially when we put the pads on. But we're not trying to use any preconceived notions on anybody. We want to be able to kind of observe for ourselves and give them a clean slate.
You made a very early public push to pack Central State for the spring game. Why was that such an important focus for you?
I think it shows the energy and passion level for a united Bulldog Nation, which is what I'm trying to achieve on G-Day. You know, I still want to challenge everybody to come out for 93,000. There's no reason why we can't fill that stadium on April 16th. I'm excited about it. I think we've got a great fan base, and I think it shows a commitment to the program. It also shows our players the energy level and the passion that our fans have. It certainly doesn't hurt in recruiting either to have 93,000 fill the stands, and that's kind of what we're aiming at.
You mentioned overall being pleased with the winter workouts, but I know that at least once you mentioned about guys,
Yeah.
the way they work. Is it safe to say those instances have been few and far between?
I would say it's off and on. I'm pleased with where they are now. I'm not pleased with necessarily the way that we got there throughout. There was bumps and bruises and there were days that were better than others. I think that's the case anytime. If you're honest with yourself, every day is not a good workout. And if you think that's the case, then you probably got a little bit of fool's gold in you. The days that we didn't have good workouts, I made sure I let them know that. It's important they know that. I think one of the best things you can do for an athlete psychologically is give them instant feedback. You know, I had the analogy once about those speed signs, the speed limit signs. You put a speed limit on the road, people don't necessarily obey it. But when you flash somebody's speed, they've done studies, and you're flashing your speed, guess what you do immediately? Slow down. It's called instant feedback. So we try to tell our players all the time that if you don't do right, we're going to give you instant feedback. It's a great analogy. I see a speed limit sign, doesn't necessarily slow me down, but I see a flashing light tells me my speed. What do? Whoa. So I'm trying to give them instant feedback of what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, and accentuate the positive and let them know that they don't. And I think that people respond better to that, and they respect you more when you do that. So that's what we're trying to do as a coaching staff with our guys.
Coach, how many days do you anticipate full pads in spring, and also status report on Nick Chubb?
Great question there. You know, NCAA has rules for us. We're going to be 3 helmets and shorts where we can. And every time we scrimmage, we'll end up being, so that leaves, I think, 12 other practices where we'll either be in full pads or we'll be in what we call shells, uppers, and some form of shorts. So the 3 days we're required to be in helmet and true shorts. We'll adhere to those 3 days, and then the other 12 we'll get after. As far as Nick goes, guys, this guy's working tremendously hard. He is dead on schedule. If you ask on, he'd probably be a little bit ahead of schedule as far as what we expect of him. He started doing a little cutting since we've been back in spring break, so he's doing some running, not just straight ahead, doing a little bit of cutting. He will not be involved in any team drills throughout spring, but we're excited about where he is, and he's progressed really well. He is a kid that's, obviously he overachieves anyway, but he's overachieving in rehab as well.
You say on schedule, do you think he'll be full-time, full 100% come August?
I think it's hard to say right now. He's on schedule for where he's got to be right now. Again, I'm not forecasting forward to go and say he's going to be 100% first day of practice in fall camp. I think we've got to determine that as we go.
Kirby, what's the biggest position of question of depth right now as you get into spring practice?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I got questions at every position as far as depth is my concern, but I mean, you said what were the majors, I would probably say inside linebacker because of some injuries. You know, Reggie's coming off of a shoulder surgery there. Roquan had a surgery on his wrist, and Roquan's going to not be able to go all spring. He'll be able to do some drills, but not all. Sean McGee, who's worked some inside linebacker, had to go through a knee scope. So when you start saying these guys, they're not out, but they're not completely in either. Now, that scares me a little bit because it's not a position of great depth anyway at inside linebacker. So that one concerns me. Obviously, the offensive line has been a concern all along about the depth and the size there. I think it's important that we improve on that going forward. But obviously, the depth, I would like to have a 3-deep offensive line every spring. That's 15 guys. And that's hard to do in spring unless you get mid-year enrollees. So it's a challenge anytime to have 15 quality, really good offensive linemen. And I think that's one of the areas that we've got to work on building and try to get more depth to that position.
Hey Kirby, at what point, you talked earlier in your time here about your love for the institution and so forth. At what point did this become a job and not sort of a love affair with the school? And how difficult has it been to institute change so far, institutionally?
You have to do that again. You have to ask that question again. I love my job, so it's a combination of the two. I mean, I really don't think that it's. I mean, I've been coaching now for right at 18 years, and I don't think that I've ever looked at it as it was just a job. You know, it's been a passion for the players. My drive and my life is to develop players, to give them an opportunity to better themselves, whether it be through NFL or in education. That's kind of why I do this. And it makes me feel really good when they achieve that. So since I've been here, it's not like it's been, oh, my love affair with the university has now come with the job part of it. I mean, to me, my love affair is with the players, recruiting them and developing them and making them better. That's why I do this. So anything I can do to help them is really what it's about for me. I don't see it as a burden to have to come to work, if that's what you're asking.
When you coached against Sonny Michel, obviously he was still sharing the load with Nick. How did you see him on film evolve as a complete back and kind of a workhorse?
How I seen him evolve? At the time, he was used more as a specialty out of the backfield, receiver out of the backfield. So we didn't get to actually see it. I mean, we played him early in the year, so when I saw it, he was more of a change-up pitcher to Nick. And you had the thunder, and then you had Sony coming in there with quickness and lightning. So I didn't get to see the actual change, but I know throughout the year, he took on a much greater workload, and he was able to handle that, which was a great blessing. And we're hoping that he's up to the challenge again. And obviously, we want Nick back. We want every healthy back we can get. And I do think he grew as a runner because more was demanded of him. So he grew as a runner, and he was not just a specialty free release guy, angle routes out of the backfield. I mean, he became more diversified, which is important to him.
Coach, I know you've had a lot on your plate since December, but has it kind of hit you that you're on the practice field today? Georgia exactly hadn't had a lot of head coaches.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
But personally, does it mean something to get to where you are right now?
It's important that we get out there and get on the grass. Let's just put it that way. I feel the same way going out to the off-season workouts that I do today. I mean, we don't put any less emphasis on that, going out there and doing an off-season conditioning program where I've been on the grass excited to be around the players. The only difference you guys get to come now. So for me, it's just as excited. You know, I'm glad when we put the pads on. We're going to find out a lot more about our team with the pads on than the shorts on. We've had shorts on, so I've got to see them run around in shorts for however many weeks. So I'm excited now to get out there and get on the grass and get going. But to me, that enthusiasm was just as much as practice signing day when we got out there with the players.
Kirby, kicker and punter, what are you doing in the spring? And is Bryce Ramsey going to do any punting, or do you want him to just concentrate on quarterback?
Yeah, he will continue to be part of our punt program. During punt periods, he'll come over there and kick. And we're going to find out if he can continue to do that. Obviously, we signed a punter, and we're going to find out this spring who does the best job of punting until Marshall comes. As far as kicking, we got Rodrigo and kid William Ham, who both will be involved in our kicking game. So we're going to give these guys every opportunity to be involved, to earn the job, and then we're going to challenge them hopefully in the fall with some guys we bring in. That's the direction we're headed. But Bryce will be involved. All that's going to do is pull him away from the quarterbacks for that one punt period, but we're going to allow him to continue to punt.
Kirby, I know you have a graduate transfer coming in to be a tackle here. Offensive line wise, did you guys have, was it pretty easy to decide who's a guard, who's a tackle, kind of thing?
Yeah.
What can you share some of the ideas you had there?
Yeah. You know, every guy, Coach Pittman's belief is they should learn a new position. Now, obviously, they got to work in one position starting off. So, as far as where we're starting off, you know, we got Kendall Baker, who's going to be able to work and tackle some with that first group, and obviously Greg Pike. We're going to ask, Isaiah's got to be a guy that can play almost all 5 positions. He's going to start off at guard, but there's some in-depth conversations there. What we basically do is identify a guy. Is he a tackle only? Is he a guard center only? And then which guys can go both ways and be able to do both. And throughout the spring, we're going to have to work different groupings there. I think it's important to cross-train because we cannot anticipate injuries, and they ultimately will happen in the offensive line in the front. So we've got to be ready, more prepared to handle all those situations as they come up. But I'll say this, Coach Pittman's done a really good job in years past, us playing both at Tennessee and at Arkansas, of when somebody goes down, having another guy ready and training those guys across the board.
Kirby, you mentioned injuries a little while ago. Is there an update on Chooks Michie and Brandon Douglas and their availability for the spring?
Sure. Shoots is a guy that's coming off label repair that is, you know, he had his after the bowl game. So he'll be very limited on the labral surgery. We're gonna have to do some things on air. He will not be in part of contact stuff and all the stuff going on with that. He's a guy that's really tough with the shoulder happening as recent as it did. And then Brendan Douglas will be available for some stuff. We'll have black jersey on him, and he won't be a contact guy right away, but he'll be covered up with a cast there and progressing forward with his wrist.
Kirby, you've shown a lot of enthusiasm just in general, and then I went back and watched some games that y'all played at Bama. Do you think that, as the head coach now, has anyone said to you, hey, you can't jump around, you can't be enthusiastic while you're the head guy having to make decisions, or is that Kirby and that's what you're going to be?
Yeah, I think I've got to ride the horse that brought me. So, I mean, I got to be who I am, and the biggest thing for me is not trying to change who I am. There'll be times I think I have to temper that, and whether it's good or bad times or emotional times, you've got to make good decisions as a head coach. But my enthusiasm is natural, and it's not premeditated, and I think that's still going to come out in me. It's not something that, to be honest, I concern myself with. I plan on doing what I do and trying to affect the players, whatever I can do to reach them. And if that helps affect their enthusiasm for games, then I want it to be that way. You know, so it's not something that I thought long and hard about.
Well, you talk about, you know, the little things of football that I think a lot of people would say really made that you know, Coach Saban and obviously you under him, his attention to the most minute details and what they add up to be come game time.
You're asking what are those details?
Or just to talk on the importance of
yeah, the devil's in the details. Okay, so we spent a good 2 hours this morning making sure that this practice is organized. It's very important that you have every detail, every expectation. You know, yesterday we go over with the guys every expectation we have of them. And we want them to understand, because I think it's important to be successful, that they know what you expect of them, and they can respond when it's not that way. So every single, it doesn't matter whether it's running on the field, running off the field, all the things that you might take for granted, having your helmet in your hand, your helmet's not sitting on the side. Every detail that you can have covered, we've covered with these guys to make sure they understand that these things are important. They're part of discipline. They're part of doing things right. They're part of accountability. If we don't have accountability and discipline, then we don't have a very good program. So it all starts with that, and a lot of that starts today. Some of it started in the off-season conditioning program, but there's only so much you can do from that standpoint.
And how much of the instant feedback is amplified on the field?
You say amplified, you mean yelling and screaming? I think instant feedback to each player is different. You know, some guys need that. Some guys need the motivation. Some guys need to be driven. Some guys don't. Some guys just need to be corrected. And they handle it the right way, but I think each player is different in that regard.
Coach, there's a couple of disciplinary matters that were kind of left hanging after the last season from Kimbrough, I think, and Chauncey Rivers. What's the status of those guys heading in the spring and fall?
Yeah, with Chauncey, you know, his has been a university issue, and they're handling that. University issue as far as we go. He'll go through spring, just normal. We know he's going to have some stuff he's got to adhere to at the beginning of the year. And then Tim Kimbrough is, again, a guy that had a little bit of an issue there before the bowl, which we were not part of. We talked to him about that, and we've addressed it. And Tim has done a nice job of doing what we asked him to do. And Tim's back with us instead of repping and got a clean slate.
Kirby, I've already talked about, you know, Jacob Easton is one of the early enrollees. What about those other guys, those challenges they're going to face, and what you want to see from them?
They're going to face some challenges today, I promise you. They'll see some guys they hadn't seen yet as far as going up against. But we're excited about all those guys. You know, Ben's been working hard. He's a competitor. He's a guy in the all-season conditioning program that's really worked hard. He tries to win every drill. It's important to him. Isaac, same way. You know, Isaac's really competed hard with the tight ends. He's challenging those guys day in and day out to be at their best. Really impressed with Chad. He's worked hard. Chad Clay's done a good job. I mean, it's going to be a large learning curve for those guys, but there's also going to be a large competitive curve because some of those guys haven't gone up against the competition they're going to be faced with today. And then Julian obviously has worked really hard with us as well. He's doing a good job. He provides us depth at a position. We lost a lot of guys inside, so I'm pleased with how hard he's working. But we'll find out a lot more about those guys today. Did I hit each one of them? Is that the 5? So, I mean, those guys are, you know, it'll be fun to see them today. It'll be my first chance to see them compete against big people and fast people. So we'll find out a lot more about it.
Ridley?
Yeah, Riley Ridley's the other. Riley Ridley's been out there working hard, and Riley's done a really good job as well. I mean, I'm proud of him coming in as quick as he did and working. And one of the reasons that we decided to take Riley was the fact that he's going to give us more competition. Guys, again, competition is what we're about, competing for your job. Everybody's job is safe, so he gives us competition at a position that we need to push some guys.
Talked to a defensive coach once when he became a head coach, and he talked about that first practice where he didn't know what to do. He'd always been going to his position group or the defense in general. He was walking around with his hands in his pocket. He couldn't blow a whistle anymore. I was just wondering if that's gone through your mind, and are you going to make a concerted effort to try to spend as much time with the offense, or to stand back and watch the other assistants? Or
I wish you'd asked me that question after this practice, because I think some of it I'm going to find out there. You know, I've got a plan to be involved with the offense certain periods. I plan on going over there, and I've kind of scripted them out for myself to be there and be visible where I'm with them. The good thing about spring is obviously you go good on good, you know, so I'll get to be around them by being around the defense. But there'll be parts of the day where they're not together that I want to be over there. I will also have a role in the secondary, because we're kind of we're one guy short right now, so GA. So with one guy short of GA, I'm going to have to help out with the secondary, maybe during individual periods and that kind of thing. But throughout the practice, I'm going to make a concerted effort to go over and be with the offensive guys and be around it. I think it'll be fun. It'll be definitely a change.
Last question.
Do you have a sense for the leadership within the team? I know that's developing, but through the strength and conditioning program, where do you stand there, do you think?
You say a good sense. I don't know if I've got a great feel for it. What we've had is several leadership meetings. We've got a senior group, but we've also got a little bit of a leadership group. So the senior group's done a good job. They're very opinionated. Those are the guys that are willing to tell you what they really think, because they know where they are in their career. They're open to doing it. A lot of the younger guys won't do that, and they're not comfortable doing it yet. But we've seen some of the leadership rear its head in those trying conditions that we put them through in the off-season conditioning program. So I'm excited about some of the vocal leaders who spoke up and talked, and I think that's a big thing that you can do. You can develop leadership, and we're really trying to do that here. That's probably the biggest thing I'd say I take from University of Alabama is every year trying to find that new group, that new person. And all these guys are new to me. So it's like, okay, which one's going to step out and be the best leader? Which guy's going to be the vocal guy? And which ones are not going to say anything but just do all the work and everybody's going to follow them? And I think looking at that, standing back and saying, okay, I can see this now, and I'm not over here in this drill coaching it, you see a lot more of that from a head coach position, and I'm very pleased with where that is. But I also think we've got a long way to go to be where I want to be when it comes to leadership. Thank you guys, appreciate it. Look forward to having y'all out there.